Hey guys, so this week's Q&A, this is going to be the last Q&A that I film before the birth, I think. I'm coming up to 38 weeks, so I don't think I'm going to have time to do another one. I've actually filmed the one for next week anyway, so you'll be seeing another one from me that's already filmed. And today's Q&A, we are going to talk about setting up anchor points and automating as much of the process as possible, right? Why are we talking about this? I talk a lot about getting your calories under control, getting in a calorie deficit, and being very, very clinical about it. Like, you need this number of calories, you need to figure out how many calories you need to maintain your weight. Then you need to figure out how much of a deficit you can manage, you can tolerate. And then over a period of time, you need to work out how to get fitter so that you're burning more calories and metabolically functioning better. How to get more sleep, how to reduce stress so that you have more energy to eat well and things like that. And maybe over time, reducing your calorie intake, but strategically also taking diet breaks. Okay, so actually taking a break from dieting, from being in a calorie deficit, okay, so that you can psychologically stay on track, but also metabolically stay on track, so that you get that little boost to your metabolism every so often, you get a little psychological break. So strategically taking diet breaks along the way, whether it's just for a day, whether it's for a week at a time, whether it's for a month at a time, whatever it is that you need, and it's going to change throughout your journey and it's going to be different for everyone. So that's kind of the big stuff that we've talked about until now. But a couple of things that come up time and time again is that calorie counting is extremely tedious, right? You go into your app, you have to write out, search the foods that you've eaten. You have to, and it does get easier. There's a big learning curve in the beginning, because in the beginning, when you first start using MyFitnessPal or a similar thing, you're looking up every single food item. You're trying to figure out the right way and the wrong way of counting food. So I gave the example of the espresso with milk. You don't want to search espresso with milk. You want to just search the milk with the percentage fat that you're drinking and put in 100 milliliters, 200 milliliters, whatever it is. Okay, so you're learning all of these things in the beginning, and that is a really steep learning curve. In the first week, it's a really steep learning curve, okay? But it doesn't stay that hard. But if you do it for a couple of weeks, it gets easier and easier and easier. And part of the reason it gets easier is because you know how to use the app, but also because you have now your foods that show up time and time again, and you know what your portion sizes are, you know how many calories are in things, and they're more accessible on the app. You don't have to search them in a database of millions of things. Most people eat the same 15 to 20 food items 80% of the time. Okay, so it starts to get easier and the learning curve starts to flatten off. Nonetheless, counting calories for a very long period of time is extremely tedious. It gets boring. You have other things to do. And in any case, it's not something that is a long-term strategy. You can't count calories for the rest of your life. You can't. You have to get to a place where you can put things on autopilot a little bit. So that's one reason to automate a lot of this process. But another reason to automate a lot of this process is because we get decision fatigue, right? We end up getting every day, a few times a day, sort of going, oh, shall I eat now? What shall I eat? How much shall I eat? Shall I eat now, or shall I eat a little bit later? Or should I have a snack now and then I eat a little bit later? Or maybe I need to, what should I eat before I work out? And if you're making these decisions 70,000 times a day, it gets too much. And then when you're tired and you have other things, important things that you need to make time for and energy for, you're not going to want to spend time thinking about, you're just going to default to whatever's easiest, to grabbing the muffin or to just grabbing like the leftover chicken nuggets from the fridge or whatever. The third reason to automate this is to regulate your hormones, regulate your circadian rhythm, help reduce stress, it regulate your blood sugar levels, and find a rhythm that suits you. When you start to this often helps us improve sleep and improve stress levels. But when we're eating regular meals, we also know, like, if you every day have like a salad with a portion of protein and a slice of bread, if one day you have like something, you know, a massive sandwich with like 4 times as much bread, and then you feel tired afterwards, you know, well, it's because of, you know, eating different types of food or a bigger quantity of different types of food. So you start to get a real picture of knowing exactly what portions you need. So the way that I like to do this is I like to help people figure out anchor points. And you want to have, every day, you want to have 3, it's a good idea to start with 3 anchor points: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And most people do well eating those 3 meals and then somewhere in between having a snack, right? And it's usually between lunch and dinner. But for some people it might be, you know, you might have an early dinner and then you might have a snack before you go to bed. Most people do well with those with 4 kind of meals, and 3 of them being sort of like more firmly set in stone anchor points. Okay, so I just always recommend to start with 3, right? And there are people who are going to do well with 2. There are people who are going to be like, you know, I wake up in the morning and I have my coffee and then I'm not hungry until lunchtime. That is okay. I really want you to encourage you to find what works for you here. Once you've found what works for you, just rinse and repeat it, okay? So we've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You want to start with some anchor points, which are just specific times of the day that you aim to eat. So let's say it's 8 a.m., 8 a.m. breakfast. Let's say you get up at 6, you have your coffee, you start like doing things. Maybe you work out, maybe you take the kids to childcare, whatever it is. And then at 8 o'clock, that's when you have that's when you're hungry, okay? And this is a really important thing. I want you to base your anchor points on when you are hungry, when you naturally become hungry. And it might change a lot at the moment, but once you start to get into a rhythm, you'll start to get hungry at similar times each day. So let's say 8 a.m. works for you. Let's say it doesn't matter if it's 9 a.m. for you. If you're listening to this and you're thinking 8 a.m. is way too early, I only wake up at 8 a.m., whatever it is, you might need to shift this to 9 to 10 a.m. It doesn't matter. That's the thing, is it has to suit you. Then you get hungry again at 12 and you have lunch at 12. Then you have dinner at 7 p.m. Okay, so let's say there are 3 anchor points: 8 a.m., 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. right? That they could be your 3 anchor points, and it might be a guess in the beginning about what most suits you, and it should suit you and your family. Okay, so if you like to eat dinner, sit down and eat dinner with your kids at 5:30, then your anchor point should be 5:30 to sit down and have a meal with them. If you like to have a little snack when your kids are eating, and then after they've gone to bed at 9 p.m, you and your husband sit down, you and your partner sit down and have dinner together at 9 p.m, then that should be your anchor point for dinner. If you like to work out before eating breakfast, like I love to do that. I love to get up, get my workout in, and then I'm hungry around 9 a.m. That's my first anchor point. That's when I'll eat my breakfast. Then you should do that. If you wake up starving hungry at 6 a.m, then that should be your first anchor point, okay? So these are all very, very, it's very flexible to you and your schedule. If you're not hungry until 11 and you eat at 11 and then you're hungry again at 4 p.m. and that's when you want to have lunch, or 3:30 maybe before you go get the kids, then you want to eat at 9 p.m. That's also fine. There's no right or wrong here. It's whatever suits you. But you got to pick those 3 anchor points and just find what I could get, and find. You have to find those 3 anchor points that work for you and stick to them, right? And if you need to move them, move them. Now, I could give you 1,000 different examples, but I'll give you what works for me. 9 a.m. Breakfast. I get up, have my coffee earlier. Usually try and do some exercise in the morning. 9 a.m. is when I have my breakfast. 1 p.m. is when I have lunch. And 7 p.m. is when I have dinner. So between 7 and 8. Somewhere around there. And somewhere in between in the afternoon, I usually have a snack. Okay, a small snack. Now, the way this works is as follows. These are the reason why they're anchor points is that's what you're kind of aiming to hit every day. But there is some flexibility built into this. It's not the end of the world. If, like, let's say you went out for dinner last night and you had this massive meal, right? And you're absolutely stuffed. Went way over your calorie budget, really enjoyed it. It was a friend's birthday, whatever. You wake up in the morning and you're not hungry at your usual time. No dramas whatsoever. Don't eat at 9 a.m. Let's say you're not hungry until your lunch at when you usually eat lunch at 12. Fine, just skip the breakfast and have your next anchor point at 12. And I know that there's lots of people who will tell you don't skip breakfast, don't do this, don't do that. But if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. It's okay. It's okay to just leave that. Or you might sort of get to 10:30 and now you're a bit peckish, but you're not really hungry, like not how you usually are. So you have a piece of fruit, maybe 2 pieces of fruit. Because why? You want to hit your next anchor point. You've already missed that anchor point. The goal is to hit the next anchor point. So you want to have enough to tide you over to the next anchor point. You might need a little bit more than that. You might need a fruit and a yogurt or a few nuts or whatever it is. But with time, you'll get to know your body and your hunger signals. But you want to make sure that you're hungry at your next anchor point, which for me is like 12 till 1. I want to eat sometime around that point. Let's say you went out for lunch, again, example of a friend's birthday, at 1 p.m, you had this massive meal and then you had cake afterwards and whatever. Or you had a family meal, it's a holiday, you had a massive like barbecue in the middle of the day, you ate too much. Don't worry about hitting your anchor point or eating your same meal that you would usually eat, same size meal. Maybe you need to eat a snack just before you go to bed. Maybe you don't have a snack at all in the afternoon. Maybe you have a smaller meal than usual. It's fine. The flexibility is built into it. The goal is then to hit your next anchor point, okay? So we get as much of a regular schedule going as possible, but it's there to serve you. Don't be a slave to it. Don't be like, oh, I can't go for this friend's birthday because it's not one of my anchor points, or I can't overeat. Like, you have to go and enjoy those things. And then you just adjust at the next anchor point, okay? It's just to kind of try and steer your course and get back on track and always take the focus off. A lot of people sort of go, okay, now I've ruined it. Now I've like fucked the whole thing. Now I've had too much to eat. There's no way, now I've just ruined my diet. No, the goal is to get on the next, not necessarily get back on track the next day, but to get back on track the next anchor point, okay? So it's just a way of thinking, as well as all the other things that I talked about before, about automating the process and everything like that, is also just a way of thinking that helps you get back on track rather than obsessing over what you did wrong in the previous thing. Okay, so the last stage of this, okay, we talked about setting up those anchor points, finding what works for you with your daily schedule, with your sleep-wake cycles, with your work schedule, with your kids, with your exercise habits. When you like to exercise, do you like to exercise in the morning? Do you like to exercise in the evening? So we talked about like the logistics of setting all of that stuff up. The next thing that I want you to think about is the next thing that we need to do is figuring out what a meal at that anchor point looks like. Okay, this is like the final stage of this. And what I recommend to everyone to have is about 3 or 4 meals to start with that you rotate at every anchor point. And these are your, like 80% of the time, this is what you're going to eat. So let's say breakfast is, personally, I have a smoothie every single, sorry, message popped up. Personally, I have a smoothie every single morning. I have pretty much the exact same ingredients in it every single morning. So that's my first meal. And I know that there's like, I know I've got a yogurt in it, I've got a certain amount of frozen fruit, I've got some seeds in it, like I've got my ingredients, and I know how many calories are in each thing, I know how much protein's in it, and more or less how many carbs and whatever. So I know it's like about a 450 calorie serving, and I've got about 20-25 grams of protein in my smoothie, right? And so that's, I will eat that every day. I don't really care. I don't really need that much variation. But I do have a couple of other breakfast options. Another option for me is like a protein yogurt, like a Greek yogurt with some chopped fruit and some homemade granola and some honey on it. There's another thing I like to have. Another option I like to have is a bowl of porridge, more for like the winter. 4 tablespoons of oats, a tablespoon of flax seeds, a banana and a yogurt on top, okay? And I know how many, each one of these is about a 450 calorie serving. I know it's enough for me after a workout. I know it's enough to keep me going until lunch. It's something that works really, really well for me. And you could have just one option. Some people like to have the exact same thing every day, or over time you might build up a few options. You might be somebody who needs more variation, so you might need to have 10 options. It's fine, but over time you get to know what each of the serving sizes are. And like when I make my porridge, I don't have to weigh things. I don't have to recalculate how much is in it. I just get my oats. I do the 4 tablespoons of oats. I pour milk to cover it, and I know that's more or less 200 milliliters of milk. I use my pot of yogurt and a banana. You get to know what the portion sizes are, and then you don't have to recount calories every single time. You know there's 450 calories more or less in this meal, and it's just rinse repeat. So you've got your they're the 4 options that I have, or 3 options that I have for breakfast. Then lunch, okay? Lunch, you just do the exact same thing. So one option for me is like a tuna salad. Another option is 3 eggs, a slice of toast, and some vegetables like fried in the egg, right? And on the toast, some like low-fat cheese, like Labanais. I really like. It's got like this tangy kind of flavor. So again, like I've got a few options for lunch, and you come up with whatever options work for you. But I know that they're more or less like a 400 to 500 calorie meal, and I know what my portion sizes are. Then in the evening, you have the exact same thing. You have 3 or 4 options that you just repeat over and over again. Evenings, people usually have a few more options because it's family time and you eat meals like we eat a meal with your family. Maybe you've got like the healthy, really easy option. Then maybe you have a really lazy option. Like it might be a bowl of cereal. That might be an option. That might be something that you have on really lazy days. Or it might be, a toasted cheese sandwich with some chopped up bits of vegetables. It might be, the kids like chicken and chips. It might be hamburgers. It might be spaghetti bolognese. It might be a big salad. It might be a lentil curry. Like there might be, most of us have like this repertoire of meals that we repeat over and over and over again. So figure out how many calories are in these meals that you're eating and what the portion sizes are, and then just rinse and repeat it. Okay. So in this way, you can know, okay, let's say you need to eat 2,000 calories a day. Then you want to be hitting like 500 calories for it, or like maybe you have a 500 calorie breakfast, 500 calorie lunch. You have a coffee as well, which is another 100 calories. Your dinner is 700 calories. And then you've got like an extra 200 calories left over for a snack in the afternoon. Maybe that's how you figure it out. Maybe you've got a much lower budget. You're on much lower calories. So all of that shifts down. But then you've got the you've got set meal times, you've got set meals that you eat at each meal time. And then you just, and you don't have to count calories every single time. So after you spend like at least a couple of weeks, you should spend a couple of weeks counting calories. You can then start to put this process into place and start to have set meal times and set meals that you rotate. This also makes the shopping easier, because each time you do the shopping, you just got to make sure you're stocked up for those different meals. Dinner is obviously the hardest one, but if you have a yogurt every single breakfast, you need to make sure you have a shit ton of yogurts in the fridge. If you have, always put a tablespoon of linseeds of flax seeds in your porridge or in your smoothie. You need to make sure you always have those. Okay, so it makes the shopping a lot more automated as well. And it sets you up so that you don't have to every day think, okay, what am I going to have? What am I going to have for lunch? And then you start coming up with ideas, and then you start like counting all the calories in it. You've got to automate this process as much as possible. Something's moving in my bush next to me. You've got to automate this as much as possible. It doesn't mean that you can't vary the plan. It doesn't mean you can't go for lunch with a friend and have something totally different. It doesn't mean you can't suddenly make a totally different dinner or add a different dinner to your repertoire. It just means that like 80% of the time you want to just be eating the same kinds of things and just automating as much of this process as possible to make it easier, and so that you just know what's in it. Okay, so and I think I've said everything I need to say about all of this. The one thing I want to still say is that I have a worksheet that takes you through this step by step, that has a place to track your calories for 3 days and to start trying to create meal plans for. So, for example, there's a breakfast and 4 options for breakfast, where you write out the different ingredients, you write out the portions, you write out the calories and the protein in each one, and then how many calories is in the whole thing. And then you've got your 4 options for breakfast all written out. Obviously, if you want to add more to that, you can add more to that, right? And then there's the same for lunch, the same for dinner. So I'm going to post in the comment, hopefully in the comments below here, but I'll also post in the group the worksheet that you can use. You should print it out and go through it page by page in order to set up these anchor points. Again, this is a bit of work in the beginning, okay? This takes some thinking, it takes some planning, but once you've done it, it makes life so much easier, and it's so much easier than every day starting from scratch going, what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat for breakfast? What am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? Takes out so much of that. It takes out so much of the guesswork. It takes out so much of, I want to work out what am I going to, how am I going to fit my workout around my meals? Should I eat first and then go for a workout? Like, it takes out a lot of it, which I'm going to talk about next week. It takes out a lot of that stuff. Okay. So, make sure you download the worksheet that I'm going to post in the group. Make sure you work your way through that. You figure out what works for you. Any questions in the comments below. I hope this helps you kind of just make some more order and figure out a long-term strategy that doesn't involve counting calories for the rest of your life. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below.